Hello and welcome to 5-Year Club video number 104. Ask Stupid Questions. In college, I was a physics major, and a tremendous amount of the work of undergraduate physics is that they give you a set of inputs and they give you some equations or a situation, and then you have to solve for a variable. You have to solve for how high a ball is going to be, or how fast a train is going, or if something is going to break through something else. And to come up with that solution, you're going to need to take that big world of inputs that they give you, and you're going to need to figure out which of them matter in the context of this problem, and which of them are actually even going to appear in your solution. So what variables should you have at the end of the day, at the end of this problem? And there are many times when you begin working with a certain variable and you will see that its value will drop to 0, so it's irrelevant for your solution, or its value appears equally on both sides of an equation and therefore can be divided out from both sides. So it's in fact not relevant at all. So this idea of approaching a problem and knowing what is important in the problem and what is not, it's a big part of the undergraduate physics major. Another part of the undergraduate physics major is realizing that physics is built in layers. Like you have like an underlying layer of algebra, and then maybe calculus is on top of that, and then maybe on top of calculus you'll build like mechanics, and then say electrodynamics, and then maybe there's like some wave stuff built on top of that, or quantum mechanics, or whatever it is. And if you don't understand the layers below the layer that you're currently discussing, then the layer you're currently discussing will never make sense. So when you're learning this stuff layer by layer, you have to go back and check that your understanding of the previous layer is correct, because if you're confused and someone's explaining layer 2 to you, and the reason why layer 2 is confusing is because you don't actually fully understand layer 1, you only understand like 89% of layer 1, then you're going to stay confused until you understand layer 1. So you may be in like an upper level class, but if you hear something that's inconsistent with a more basic understanding that you have around physics, you have to go and ask about that basic understanding. Now, most of the time when you ask about that more basic level, you're going to have made a really silly, stupid mistake. And it's going to be embarrassing because you just sounded dumb. It's like not knowing all the vowels when you're in a advanced level literature class. But you realize that there's no choice. You're either going to stay confused about level 3, or you're going to ask about level 1. Sometimes, you have to be reminded of these basics, and that's just the case. And it feels dumb, but it's true. Other times, you'll actually identify a little error in the explanation of level 3, and the professor, whoever it is, will go back and correct it. And then you'll be like, okay, now it makes sense. I wasn't stupid. And that's not most of the time, but that is sometimes. And so these two ideas of approaching a problem, identifying what are the variables, and then finding out as quickly as I can which are the important ones, and then also asking lots of questions to verify a more fundamental understanding of what is going on in a problem. I bring these to my analysis of financial problems now that I'm spending less time on physics. For example, if we are looking at car insurance, what are the most important coverages in your car insurance? Well, what are the possible outcomes? I mean, I'm driving a Honda Civic. It's like $6,000 now because it's around 10 years old. So if my car gets wrecked, then I'm going to have to come up with $6,000. So I've got a $6,000 risk there. That's kind of my worst case scenario. But that's only one risk that car insurance covers. Another risk that car insurance covers is medical liability. If I hit somebody on the street, how much is it going to cost to fix them? Well, how much is a spine worth? Does it cost $6,000 to fix a spine no matter what the problem is? No, absolutely not. Those spinal injuries can be $1 million. Over time, they can cost a ton of money. So my maximum liability for medical is over 100 times greater than my maximum liability for the car that I'm driving. And what that tells me is that by far the controlling important factor in my car insurance is my medical liability component, not the cost of my car. Because even if there was a 100% chance that my car is going to wreck in the next year, I could cover that. But I would not be able to cover an $800,000 cost. It would completely financially wipe me out. And through that analysis, I can say, all right, let's make sure that the medical liability is covered. Even if a car insurance plan offers amazing car damage liability, if they don't offer good medical liability, I don't care about the plan because I have identified the controlling factor, and that's what I'm focused on now. Now let's look at a different scenario, like investing in a stock. I don't recommend investing in single stocks, but if I was going to invest in single stocks, these are the types of questions that I would start asking. I would say, where is the money coming from? If I'm going to buy a stock and then later I'm going to have more money, well, where is that money coming from? Is it coming from other investors who want to buy the stock from me at a higher price? Or is it coming from dividends that the stock pays me over time that are then reinvested? And those dividends are coming from profits from the company. Okay, well, where is the company getting profits from? Say the company makes airplanes. Okay, who's buying these airplanes? All right, maybe the company's main client is the U.S. government. All right, well, now that I know if the company's main client is the U.S. government, if the U.S. government stops needing airplanes, then this company's stock is probably going to drop because it's going to be hard for them to make a profit when they lose a huge chunk of their business. All right, so let's ask questions about that. Why does the U.S. government need these planes? And so we need to know these. We need to ask these questions to know what the risks are with the stock, right? We went from a very basic understanding in the beginning, like a risk of this stock is that they will not make a profit. And then we get to a more nuanced understanding of this company is like the risk of this stock is that specifically the U.S. government will drop them as a supplier. And we can get even more detailed. And it's important to get even more detailed if you're going to put your money into an investment like a stock, especially a risky investment. Typically what you'll find is that as you get deeper into understanding, your questions start becoming more fundamental. And many times those seemingly simple questions are actually not that simple. For example, you'll say, okay, the government is buying planes. Why do they want the planes? Now, that has a seemingly simple answer. You could say, well, Lewis, the government wants planes because they want to fly. So you dig a little bit deeper and you say, okay, where is the government flying to? And then suddenly, like, someone throws a wrench into the works because you'll research that question and the answer will turn out, oh, the government's actually not flying these planes. What? That's interesting. Why isn't the government flying these planes? And then you might learn a fact like, well, actually the planes have been under design for the past 5 years and they aren't actually meeting the performance specifications the government requires. And so the government has, they keep pumping money into this project, but the planes aren't doing what they need to do to be used for their purpose. All right, so now this is much more interesting because now I realize that there is some pressure on this company where if the company does not fix these problems, that the government has, then the government might in fact drop them as a client, and then the company's stock is going to fall in half and you've lost half of your money. Now, we have to get into even more details if we wanted to analyze it, like what are the problems with the planes? Has anybody else solved these problems? Things like that. But the point is that if you don't ask some questions that sometimes can sound pretty stupid, like why would anybody want an airplane, then you're not going to get to some of the juiciest, most interesting, most controlling, riskiest, or most profitable factors in this case, we're talking about a stock. But it might not be a stock. It might be a business deal between two companies. And so the point of that story and the point of this whole video is do not be afraid to ask questions that sound stupid. Aggressively ask basic questions. Even if you think you know the answer to a question, when you're talking to somebody about a financial deal or a stock or their understanding of the way that bonds work or their understanding of a taxation system or whatever it is, don't be afraid to ask. Ask something that you already know just to hear back the answer you think you're going to hear back to validate that you have already read about this. Ask about, obviously, things that you don't know, and then ask other people to verify what that first person said, and then go look up the thing on Google yourself and just ask until you understand this area better than any of the people that you've talked to. And when you can get into a position like that, it's much more likely that you're going to be successful, and it's much more likely that someone's not going to steal your money. So when people make money in the world, a lot of times they make money because of something called information asymmetry. It's when one guy knows something that another guy doesn't. It's when the seller knows something, and that's why they're dumping the thing, and the buyer doesn't know it, so he buys the thing, then it drops in value. You don't want to be on the wrong side of information asymmetry. You want to know more so that you come out ahead. And the way to know more is to swallow your pride and not think that you're so clever about it, and ask a ton of questions. Don't assume that you know what's going on. All right, that's it for 5-Year Club video number 104. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it encourages you to ask more questions and be curious and get used to understanding who is paying for this stuff. If somebody's profiting, where does that money come from? Is this a win-win situation or a win-lose situation? Am I comfortable with that? All right, that's it. Have a fabulous evening.